good to go. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday, June 18th meeting of the Harwich Council on Aging Board of Directors. We welcome anyone here. It's just our board present here today. So I will open the meeting by calling for a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion, changes, alterations of the minutes? You all have them in front of you. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous vote. We have nobody here for public comment today, unless, Julie, do you have any correspondence?
I don't.
Nothing. Then, couple things, just briefly. Charter Commission is in session. They're starting to look at everything for the town. They're going to be looking at committees. They're going to be looking at term limits, looking at a whole bunch of things. They may be looking at some charges as well that will tie into bylaws. One of the things they talked about was in the charter is doing a sort of a check by check with the bylaws of the town. I'm on the committee. If anyone has anything they want to bring in, we're looking for loads of public comment. Happy to bring it back to the committee for you. I'm going to hold my comments on the needs assessment as we get into a discussion. We're going to have as an update, but I want to have a discussion of it, just in going through a little bit before we go to public with it. So, Bob, pull up a chair.
I had a technical question about something. Sure. I got a letter from the clerk to go in and get sworn in again. And I haven't had a chance to do that yet. Does that mean I shouldn't have voted on the last thing, the minutes that we just, I don't know if we have to do a revote because of that.
Don't the terms go to June 30th?
They do.
Oh, they do? Okay, I'm fine then.
You're
Thank
good.
you.
Bob, welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here. We just went through minutes briefly. Julie, I'm going to go right to you.
Okay.
Because I want to spend some time on the assessment.
Well, I really don't have much in the way of just an overview or update, because I did want to save time to focus on the needs assessment. That's really the bulk of what I thought we'd want to focus on today. I did want to just provide a positive update, which is that I happen to have been contacted by 2 people who want to volunteer for the driver program.
Okay.
So that's moving in a good direction. And then also another positive note, our program specialist 3 is going to start on Monday. That is Rosa Wright. She comes to us from Mid-Cape Homes. She was in the executive administrative office there and worked on a lot of different projects. Likes to stay busy, so I think she's going to be a good fit.
Great.
And that is it.
Super. Any other, needs? We have some people who need medical rides already, so you know, we're still recruiting because our #1 medical driver is doing great. John, glad you're with us today. Anything else on recruitment or training?
Not at this time.
Well, good. Okay, great. How's the women's breakfast going?
Very well. Just as well attended as the men's. They socialize, I think, just as much. Everyone loves to be there. I think it would be nice if we could see more people bring a friend like we do at the men's breakfast.
And I think that's because we've got a decent crowd at the men's breakfast. I'm hoping for more. And the goal is, I talked to a gentleman who's living in Pine Oaks on Oak Street the other day. Retired, a couple of years, had been through a number of bouts of cancer. And we're chatting for a bit, and he said, I get lonely. And we know how the social isolation is so difficult for so many of our seniors. So I said, well, why don't you come down? We do a breakfast once a month.
No.
I said, you'll meet some new people. And he's a golfer. I said, many of them are golfers.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity to come. Oh, when is it? He didn't get the newsletter. I said, you need to call, get the newsletter so you can see what's going on. I said, there's no reason, especially living there,
right,
to be isolated.
Right.
There's absolutely no. And I think and as we get into the needs assessment, talking about communication. Because as much as we think we do, as many programs and services that we provide, there are still those in the community who don't know. So we're pushing from the men's. I normally work with Julie on the men's breakfast. Keep pushing. Bring a friend. And I had a guy say, well, I'm from Dennis. I said, bring him anyway. Just so that people can be aware of what's happening here.
Sure.
Because we have events that are open to other people besides our residents that they may choose to sign up for. And whoever, if any of you go to the women's breakfasts, do you go, Angie?
I do, yeah, it's great.
Would you put that plug in sometime? You know, hey, bring a friend. Next month, bring a friend. Just because those are great opportunities. Julie or the staff will normally do announcements of certain things that are coming up. It's a great opportunity. And then someone comes in new, we can get them signed up for the newsletter. The more that we can publicize the work that's being done, the more seniors we can get to. So.
It is hard at Pine Oaks. I mean, well, it's hard everywhere.
Yeah.
We do bring newsletters to drop off in the community room so that if people aren't signing up to get them at home themselves, they have a place to find them. Melanie and I, the resident coordinator, we just did, along with Sue and Saranya, an outreach lunch at each of the sites, and then also a Mother's Day afternoon tea. So trying to reach some people who don't otherwise come, they're not going to come to our center, but maybe they'll come to the community room at Pine Oaks to participate in something, especially if we're bringing good food, which we did. And there were a few new faces there, but I think it's really hard for people to take that first step and come to something where they know they're not going to know somebody.
And I'm going to say something, and I don't mean it to sound sexist in any way, but I think it's tough for a single guy, retired. He's not going to a Mother's Day tea.
Right.
You know, he may be hesitant to go to a luncheon because it's mostly women going. That's why the breakfast is so good.
Yeah.
Because I'm with the guys, I'm with the girls, and it makes it easier. And I just think it is difficult, and that's one of the discussions that we're going to look at in the needs assessment. You know, we have different demographics of people we need to get to in the community, and what their individual needs are that may be different from the women, from the men, from the partnered versus the individual members of the community. How do we get to them? So. Well, let's get into it.
There are some good ideas.
Yeah, and you all have copies. You got copies in the mail. You all have copies in front of you of the slide decks and so forth.
The single handout that I passed around that was not the agenda and minutes, all this is I pulled out the text from the last set of slides that detail what their primary findings are and the recommendations related to those findings. So that way we can look at it all just on one sheet of paper. And I bolded the items that I thought we could work on immediately. It's like something we're not doing now, and it's an easy lift. We don't need much support from other departments or from the community. We can just start implementing those things right away, which is not to say we won't tackle the harder things as well, but it's a place to get started.
And the other night, the contract was renewed for the Orleans program, the respite program out there. Did everyone have a chance to go through the report?
Yes. Yeah, I looked at it.
Anyone have any concerns, discussion items, areas that you want to address with relative to it?
I think one of the things that impressed me or impacted me in doing the report, reading the report, was how much of the report captured things that we're concerned about now, primarily housing. How that housing issue is bigger than just a place to live. It's a big issue in terms of support staff, you know, teachers, policemen, firemen, supermarket workers, plumbers, electricians. All these people need a place to live, and we're not addressing that. And I think that hit me really big in this needs assessment. Housing is a problem for not only aging in place, but I mean just plain living. And I think it's part of something that we need to really focus on more. That was my takeaway.
It's an interesting one. I spoke at the selectmen's meeting the other night because someone talked about, is there really a housing crisis?
Oh God, yes.
And I just, as I shook my head, and when we talk about it, because my practice in real estate is predominantly with seniors. And I have 3 estates and 2 seniors I'm working with right now. You know, and one frankly waited a little too long. And because, what's the plan, where am I gonna go?
Where am I going?
And I know,
Exactly.
there are a number out in the community like that.
Yes, exactly.
And to try to clarify it for some people, if we go back to the 1980s, 1990s in Massachusetts, there used to be an indicator of a ratio of income to house purchase price. That was about 3. So if you're making $100,000 a year, you're looking at a $300,000 property. Now, we're between 6 and 7. So that, and to put it into perspective, and looking at everyone who has different income levels, to qualify for the basic, and right now in Harwich, 1 under 600,000. To qualify that, you need $225,000 minimum income to qualify for a mortgage, plus the requisite down payment to do it. So when I hear people say there's none, and what caused this multiplier to change so dramatically is back in the 80s, in the 90s, we still had builders doing starter homes, mid-level homes. Now we see the predominance of construction happening in this community. They're all multi-million-dollar homes. We're not building because the cost of land here on Cape Cod is so exorbitant. You can do it in Florida, you can do it in Texas. You can build basically entry-level homes because they have land. We don't. So it's exacerbated here in New England, and for those who continue to speak, I think ignorantly, that we don't have a housing crisis, I wish they'd spend a day with me in my office, fielding some of the phone calls of people saying, do you have anything for rent under $2,000 a month? And when I refer them to the 2 major players, and there are 2 major players who are landlords on the Cape, those are now averaging $3,000 a month.
I was gonna
Two
say,
bedrooms.
under 3,000, it'd be closer to a target at this
Exactly.
point.
But when someone's making X amount a year,
I know, yeah, it's,
you know, and they're spending, you know, a half of their
Or
income
more, yeah.
or more on rent.
Yeah.
You know,
because, you know, all these multi-million-dollar homes that are being built, yes, it increases our tax base, but where are the service people to service the people who buy these multi-million-dollar homes? You know, there's landscapers and all of these people who need to service these people. They aren't there. I mean, we don't have it. And it's a problem that we're talking a lot about it, but we're not doing anything about it. That's the thing that bothers me most. I mean, the Marceline property, how long has that been under discussion? Nothing's happening. And, you know, we've got to really step up to this.
Here's the thing, and this was a discussion tonight, because Penrose, who got the bid to do the Marceline property, 456 Queen Anne, as the family prefers to be called, that process, Affordable Housing Trust sent out a request for proposals. What is in the best interest? They had a number, they chose this particular company, Penrose, who's doing a number of them on the Cape right
I
now.
understand that.
But they looked at the timeline the other night. It's gonna be 2 to 3 years
Exactly.
before there's a shovel that goes in the ground, because the only way they're building something like that, which is gonna be 60 units, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units for, again, a number of people, and in a frank discussion, especially of our demographic of seniors, people who are substantially overhoused, but don't have a place to go. And there's a 3 to 5 year waiting list for Pine Oaks, and many don't qualify to go there. So, in order for them to build a project like that, Penrose, they're requiring on tax credits. And it's a local initiative plan that is funded by the state, and they make an application. They were very honest the other night, saying many times in the first round of an application, they don't get funded. So they have to go to the second year. The average time to get approved is 1.5 years from literally applying. So from the meeting Monday night to groundbreaking, maybe 2 years, to someone moving in, maybe 3 years. That is a 7-year process from when the town bought the land to when someone moves in. Angie?
I had a question on this Penrose property over on Queen Anne. What percentage of those houses are really going to be affordable? I mean, for the average young person, and how many of those units will be able to be purchased by young people so they have equity?
It's all rental, number one.
It's all
And
rental.
It varies. There's some as low as 30% of AMI. Now, AMI is area median income. That's described by the county, okay? So that says, and do you know off the top of your head what that one is?
The 80% AMI or the
What is
AMI?
the AMI?
It's a little over 100 right now. I want to say 110.
Okay, so there are a number of units reserved for those at 30%. So making $30,000 a year. There are a certain number reserved for those under 80%. Okay, so a husband and wife working, take two people working in this building. Okay, they might have an income of 80 to 85,000. They would qualify for that. And then there are some that are going to be up to 100%. So the quote unquote workforce housing.
Right.
But there's no purchase in there. However, they have another piece of land north of where they're going to develop.
Right.
That I'm hoping to God, and we discussed the housing issue for our seniors, is that they allow an increased density.
Yeah.
Again, it borders 124 and Route 6.
Is that the junkyard property?
No, it's the one across, the old
Oh,
pasture.
the pasture, okay.
456.
What's happening to the junkyard property?
That's gonna hit the market in the next year.
Well, okay. And
It-
is
it-
that gonna be the same kind of a situation again?
That's just, they're selling that, I understand.
They're just gonna sell
Right,
it,
they're gonna
okay.
sell it. But when you look at this, we talk about the discussion of housing for seniors. The Sandpit property,
Yeah,
okay, that's owned by a family. Purportedly, that's gonna hit the market at between 10 and 11 million.
Oh,
Oh, God.
So,
ridiculous.
for a town, again, with an $82 million budget as a community, we try to come up with what are solutions. So, you've got the Penrose, that property is cut in half, basically. There's a paper road that comes
Yeah,
out into
yeah, I know,
124. This Penrose, Angie, is being done on the south side of that.
yeah.
It's gonna come out into Queen Anne.
It's gonna crane on, yeah.
The north side, that's where I'm looking to say, that would be a great opportunity to increase density, to say like we did 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, a quarter acre lot, a 10,000 square foot lot. So now you can put 25 homes there.
Okay. Affordable for young.
And that's my point, is-
And
and not just for young, but again, someone you look at is a senior, lives in a 3,000 square
Yeah,
foot
I
home
know,
right now.
yeah.
They've lost their partner, their
Right,
kids are gone,
right.
they're living by themselves.
Right.
Wouldn't it be great to have an 800 square foot home for them
Yeah.
to live in?
Yeah,
That they could manage, a ranch, one floor,
Right.
good size.
yeah.
So, and I think as a community, I love to see it as not just young people moving,
Well, yeah.
but so you could create.
Everybody.
Yeah.
But my point is, I was just looking to see that it wasn't just the wealthy buying up,
No.
yeah, for second and third homes, and then they rent it. I'm looking at some of the places around me where they're thinking of building and then little tiny homes and then renting all of it at high prices.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing, is the discussions need, we all know, I mean, it happens, human nature. They're gonna put 10 units behind my house. Drive out,
Yeah,
wait a minute, too much, too big,
yeah,
too close.
yeah.
It's a natural reaction, it's a
Right.
human reaction that we have. But as we deal with seniors who are, and we have many, and I'm sure staff can speak with anecdotal stories of people who are living in big houses, who want a way out. They want something they can manage, because people still, please, if I'm wrong, want to age in place.
Right.
But if you're trying to care for a 3,000 square foot home,
Right.
and we see them, people in the real estate industry, that a house maybe hasn't been maintained for a few years.
Right.
Because it's too much to maintain. Can't afford the landscaper any longer. Can't do the landscape or the garden themselves any longer. And that's part of the issue. So it's a huge issue here
yes,
in
it
this
is.
community.
But in order to take care of the seniors, you're going to need the younger people. And that's where the housing issue is a big one.
Not only that, but if you look right now, if you travel by the bridge, either of the bridges, the Bourne or Sagamore Bridge, between 4 and 6 o'clock.
Oh, God,
Every day there's an exodus.
yes.
And if you look at those bridges between 6 and 7:30 in the morning,
Those are all workers.
I had a worker at my house last week, New Bedford,
Yeah, exactly.
comes every day from New
I've had
Bedford.
them come far away as Connecticut.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the issues there. One of the things I wanted to bring out just and I'm like hoping they can change. Early on, we are defined very briefly as a 7-member advisory board. We are a board of directors. And we are also responsible for policy. And I think, because it goes into a very strong and thankful article or discussion of the Friends of the Council on Aging, it minimizes the work that this board is doing. So I'd like to chat with them about that they make a few edits relative to that, because we do have still policy-making ability for the department. It's in the charter itself. Besides the housing, what are other areas that, Sheila?
So, one thing that stuck out for me was the 38% of respondents don't know who to call in the community when they need something. I created a card the size of a credit card for Monomoy kids called the Monomoy Youth Card, and it was two-sided. They could keep it in their wallet or anywhere. And I don't know if there's a way to push. It wasn't expensive to do it all. The tech school designed it, and if there's a way to get it by mail or however it gets, pushed out there, it might be a great thing for them to have, so that it has phone numbers and.
What kind of stuff did you put on it?
So for the youth card, we put, mental health.
Right, crisis type of.
Crisis stuff.
Yeah.
Also just LGBTQ stuff and
Social support.
yeah, social support. But it was just, people sometimes don't know that number to start at, so.
It's interesting, and Bob, before you were involved with Friends, we did a summit. Julie, were you here when we did that one?
I don't think so.
Okay, it was a summit of a lot of stakeholders from around the Cape, including our state representative. And it was a substantial, were you there for that one? We
I
did?
don't think I recall that, no.
It was, Angie, were you? It was, we had it in the multipurpose room. There were probably 30 stakeholders that came in.
Oh, yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And it was a discussion of we have funds, what should we do? What's the role of the Friends? What should we do? And I know there was a big discussion based on exactly your discussion of a clearinghouse for seniors. Where do I get this? Where do I get that? Who do I call for this? Who do I call for that? Because when we see the numbers, and it verifies that our discussion, this goes back probably 5 years.
Yeah, and now I know what you're talking about. I didn't attend though.
It was, it was a robust discussion, because nowhere in the Cape is that.
Yeah.
What do we call for this? And in a number of areas. The cards are great, and I use a couple of the cards that are available here as a caretaker for someone with Alzheimer's. And it's a card I use anytime we're getting any type of service, from a waitress to a technician. And
You could also have a postcard thing with a little magnet with our logo on
Yep.
it, or something for the fridge or anywhere.
I was thinking if it's credit card size, you could put it in the COA newsletter.
Yeah,
And I don't know how much, I know that space is at premium, but it would be small. You could run that every month, so it would
Right.
always be there for people to
Something they
clip out
could
and take
cut out
or
themselves.
refer back.
but back to your point, when you talk about, we go into a lot of houses, and so many of the houses have the red life-saving envelope on the fridge. But a magnet with those numbers would be great on the fridge that we could provide. And we could work with Friends to say, hey, is this something? But first and foremost, should be the COA number.
yeah.
And it's okay, as a clearinghouse, again, it's difficult because I know, I'm getting a look from Lauren, the amount of calls that they get from staff right now here.
Yeah.
But if we are doing the job and we're providing that service, that we need to have a clearinghouse. And I think that would be one of the things that we discuss moving forward for that. Other discussions and I think it's a great point, Sheila, excellent point. Anyone else?
Yeah,
Angie?
I think all the ideas are great.
Yeah.
I always am concerned, who are we missing? And I think one of the one of the ideas I saw in here was, soon as somebody moves to town, a senior citizen, we should have some kind of welcoming with all the information going out. I think that's important to try to stay ahead of the game, but who are we missing in town that we just don't know? And how do we get the information to, because I don't know if everybody gets the newsletter. I have no way of knowing that. And I know we're doing a great job of advertising. It's not like we're not, but who are we missing?
It was interesting because I received a text the other day. I had a client who moved in November, and when they looked at the house, I made them come here. I said, you need to come to the community center. You're coming in year-round to this community. You need to know the services that we offer. One of the things is reach out to the realtors who are working with most of the buyers coming into the community at a full-time basis to have a basic welcome.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Whether it's a one-page brochure, whatever. And for me, it's like, get them to it. If I'm taking someone out looking at a property,
Right.
I'm stopping here.
Yeah.
I'm walking in the front desk, saying hello to the desk and saying, look at what we have.
Yeah.
As a year-round community, we have some of the best services than any other town on the Cape. But if people aren't aware of that,
Right,
we're not doing our job.
Yeah.
So I think that's one way, Angie, that we can look at saying, let's reach out to the realtors, let's provide something.
Yeah,
It's great to say, hey, you should be aware of it. But unless they have something in their hand that
Yeah.
they say, I can give Carol, she's moving into town.
Yeah.
Carol, you should consider.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea, because that's new people coming in, you get ahead of the
yeah,
game.
and providing, I mean, I'm going back several years ago now, but, I did a pamphlet at one point, with the aid of the police department, called What If Hurricane Bob Hit Cape Cod? This was, it was
Yeah,
old. And it was something we put in all the real estate offices, we put it in the Chamber of Commerce. And I know down at our office, we put one of these slips into every one of the rental packets when people checked in. Because when is the hurricane season, it's when rental people are here.
Right.
And, what did they do?
Right,
They needed to, so I think distributing it to it, and handing it to them and say, here, give this to your people, they'll do it.
Yeah,
I mean, it worked, so I don't know.
no, I
mean,
think that's a good idea, I really do.
yeah, the magnets, I think, are a great idea too. There again, there are many companies that will do those for you, and they're relatively inexpensive, so.
Yeah, we've looked into doing something like that before. Again, a key fact is you're only gonna distribute it to people who already know you exist, right?
Right.
And the way to get it to people who don't know about you, or, who you're not already reaching, is to do just direct mail. Like, we can get a list of all of the people over age 60 from the town clerk. Well,
Okay.
all of the people who fill out their census,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so we have that. We know how many people over age 60 there are. We know how many people get our newsletter. If we had someone to do the fancy data matching, we could identify the people who don't get our newsletter,
Yeah.
right? And then target them with a mailing. But that's still gonna be 4,000 people around that.
yeah.
And there is a cost to mailing.
Yeah,
So we have to have that support. That's not something that's currently supported in our budget, so
Yeah.
that might be something that the Friends could help us with.
And that's we look at some of the suggestions here, and some are enhancement of services. With an $82 million budget in the community and a change in the leadership and administration of the community, we need to prepare. And Julie and I have talked about this. What are you preparing for next year when it gets into budget? The Select Board and Finance Committee will be coming out with a budget message. Basically, they have been 0%. We may be looking at a cut this year. So I think that this is so important, and it's great to promote the things that we're already doing that's in the report. But I think this is a great job today, Julie, to have the highlighted areas and some of the statistics, Sheila, you brought out. There are that many people in this community who are unaware of the work we're doing. So other ideas of basically a speakers bureau that we create from either our board, from friends, or from staff, that people are going out to different neighborhood associations, to different fraternal organizations, to different groups that meet here in the community center of what we offer. And then bringing things like the magnet, that if we create one, we have it available to give. Watching what we do for our breakfasts, and we had a wonderful young person from Spalding Rehab last week, and she brought a basket of giveaways. She walked out with an empty basket of giveaways, because people want them. They were chip clips and medical cassettes, and I forget the other thing.
Band-Aids.
What was it?
Yeah,
Band-Aid, right?
Band-Aid.
Oh, they love the Band-Aids.
Oh, yeah.
They love the Band-Aid.
That's what I
But,
walked home with.
but if we have and create a 5-minute, 10-minute elevator speech for what services are being provided by the Council on Aging, and that's when not everyone gets the Harwich channel and watches the updates.
Right.
To be honest with you, I'd love to see the viewership numbers on it to see how many are doing it. But how many people involved in Newcomers Organization? You know, there's so many of these other organizations, the Mid-Cape Men's Club, for instance. You know, all of these different organizations that we should be in front of saying, here's what the town of Harwich Council on Aging provides.
You know, another group I'm thinking of that attracts more older folks is the churches.
Sure.
So I'm thinking, you know how we have a month to celebrate every different group.
Right.
Maybe there could be a month we celebrate our seniors, and then we could flood all the different organizations, inclusive of the churches, with a lot of information. Or I know it's costly to have paper things, but maybe even leave them on the exits when they're leaving the churches and different things like that. I was just kind of thinking how else we could reach out to more people.
And I think it's a great idea, and when we start looking at, when we take this and start putting action steps together,
Yeah.
I think some of the suggestions that we're gonna need to look at. I attend 3 different churches through different organizations, and a couple of them, I see the actual newsletter pinned on their bulletin board.
Right.
You know, that's there, and obviously we run newsletters, we have some here available, we have some at the library available, but it's an opportunity to get them out to other vendors as well. I
Yeah.
mean, other
people,
organizations
yeah.
and churches. And that's where having a speaker committee group, that someone meets with the pastor. So that, and do you interact with many pastors right now?
One in particular, there is a church that is very large, that serves a large amount of the community, and we have a good relationship with them.
Is there still a Harwich Clergy Association?
I believe so,
They used to have
yeah.
monthly
Yes,
meetings,
yeah.
I used to attend those.
And that's a great one, because it allows to get that service out to everybody.
Yeah.
Because when people come, people are in counseling. As a counselor, someone's coming in for a specific need, they have to have, just like we're saying, we need to have a clearinghouse for not just fire and police and DPW, but for, again, we see it in here, the handyman services. But that's very risky. You know, before we're giving out a name to someone to say, oh, John Bethel's a great woodworker, you know, you need some help doing something, you should call John. Well, is John vetted? Is he quarried?
So I did actually talk to administration
Yeah.
recently about that. We get more and more requests for referrals to the community because there's no yellow pages anymore, right?
You know.
Just the internet.
Exactly, and
Every yellow
we know
page.
some people
I still have
are not,
mine.
they don't have a way to just do a simple
Right.
Google search, right? So that's what I brought to admin. I said, that was exactly my point. There is no yellow pages. People don't have access to a computer to do, or the ability to do a Google search. What if we just provide them the results of a search? So we're not recommending anyone. We don't have information about who's a good contractor or a bad contractor. We just can say, these are the local options. Here you go. Administration said that was fine, as long as we're not making a recommendation. And a step further, if we get negative feedback about somebody, we can take them off the list, because that sounds fair, right? So we are able to do that now.
And just the only concern I have for that is, I've been in business 40 years in this community, and I've had organizations, hey, we're gonna do a free brochure for you, and they call all the vendors around and put them basically advertising my brochure. I won't do it, because I'm only gonna put people on there that I have used, that I have recommended, and my concern for giving any names out from us, I can do a ChatGPT or a Google search, anything, pull it up on screen, and half of them I probably wouldn't use. That's my concern, because our population is so vulnerable. You know, I'm not sure I want someone going into someone's home that I don't know, that I don't trust, and it's very tenuous to do that. And Google search is great. And what I've found out in business over the years, if I've got a guy, a plumber, he'll be there tomorrow. Well, if he can be there tomorrow, he's not busy. He's not a great plumber. The plumber who's the best plumber, who's utilized by most of the people, I can try to make an emergency tonight, but I can't see you for 2 weeks. Because that's the trusted guy in the community. So it's a discussion we should have. I think be very, very careful of how we do it, because everything reflects back on the Council on Aging, the Council on Aging BOD, and the Friends of the Council on Aging.
Yeah, I think that message of we are not, we just don't know what their quality is and whether they are someone you should trust, but this is the list.
This is the
and
name,
and
yeah.
yours, the onus to do the vetting is still on the person.
The difficulty, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but people forget that discussion.
Yeah.
You gave me a list, and the guy took a deposit and walked away. That's the difficulty, is they don't remember, but we told you, because now you're dancing, you're backtracking. We gave you a list, and I would frankly rather have a vetted list. Somehow that it's vetted through Corey, et cetera, and saying, here's what I do. We have people we use. We do shine counselors, we have our volunteers. We were just talking about medical riders in the office. Well, if I'm gonna give someone a ride, this is what I have to go through to be able to give someone a ride.
Right.
So I think it's a further discussion down the road that we should have. I would be very hesitant right now to be providing a list unless there's some type of vetting.
I wonder if you could reverse engineer this and either ask a group of people whom you have contact information for recommendations for each one of these. So not the people that are asking for them, but who have you used in the community as an electrician, as a plumber, as a repairman, or take the list that you generate from a Google search and send that out to people, say, have you used any of these people, how would you rate them?
Yeah.
So it's like a recommendation coming from the seniors themselves.
Not being the source, but the source of the source.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I only worry about one thing in all this discussion of housing and referrals and stuff. Is it outside the scope of the COA? So in other words, yes, there's a housing crisis,
Right.
but is it outside the scope of the COA? We can certainly advocate for housing needs and for referrals or anything for repairs, but is it really outside the scope of the COA? And then the other thing is, when I read through this recommendations and all that, I try to categorize what is an incremental addition to the COA's load. And you don't have an unlimited manpower or money or anything. And so, over the years, whenever I've seen these assessments, I figure out, is it outside the scope? And is it an incremental tax or
Right.
load on the system?
Right.
Okay. And then the only other thing is you figure out maybe there's some low-hanging fruit that is in a high control area for you, an easy return with a large benefit.
Right.
So when I read these assessments, I usually figure out what's within your scope, what's outside your scope, what's low-hanging fruit, what has high rate of return, and then sometimes you actually do say this is a valid thing that is a high cost for us, but it's
Right.
very valid.
Right.
Okay, so the whole assessment, while it's very good and it's well-meaning, you don't have unlimited manpower or limited money. Okay, so somewhere along the line you have to do that categorization, and hopefully there is some low-hanging fruit with high rate of return, but you got to figure out what's and don't be careful of what's called scope creep. So in other words, you start to go down these rabbit holes and you're like, wow, we do not do that. So why have we been discussing this or working on it for 2 weeks? So that's my only 2 cents is be careful of what's outside of your scope, what you don't have the manpower or money for, but also on the other hand, try to figure out what's high rate of return that you do control and is low-hanging fruit.
And get the information out.
Yeah.
the statistics that exist, we can do that, so
Yeah.
that people are hearing that and
Sure.
then responding to the officials.
It all comes back out. What's our mission?
Right.
But that's a good point.
You know, and that's when we look at our mission and we see in the report, you know, what are COAs here to do? To provide resources and to link people. That is part of it. So I think you're right. We need to look at and prioritize. This is a multi-meeting discussion once it's presented out to the board. What I want to make sure is that when they present it to the select board and then it's presented to the town in general, that we don't have a lot of the excess saying, well, you already do that stuff. Where's the new information? What's the information we're saying, we're not getting to this percentage of the population? Those are the things, and I wanna make sure, because I've seen this when the town went through it with the local comprehensive plan and the housing production study, watching the select board pick it apart. And what they're looking for is, give me some information I don't already have. Don't give me a regurgitation of everything that you do already, we know that. What are the new things, what are the needs that are being identified that we're not aware of? What are some of the suggestions that they're giving you that we haven't thought of? And what is doable? And I have a great concern, you know, that budgets are gonna be cut back next year. And to your point, John, it's great, we wanna do some of these things, but we can't go to our friends at the Friends for everything that we do. Those are budgeted items that need to be in a budget. Those are for other things. So if a new program comes out of it, that's fine, but what can we do? And one of the biggest things is staffing here. Good luck getting any staffing through the budget in the next year or two. It's gonna be extremely difficult. And so when we do that, say, okay, we've had some suggestions to do this, it's not workable. It's not realistic within the time frame that we need. So what can we do? So I think it's one of many, many concerns. The housing issue, we can't do anything about it. Town can't do anything about it right now. No one's doing anything about it. That's the difficulty. And you need to put the experts who are able to do it. You can advocate. We can share the needs of our seniors, the need for additional housing, the need for housing that's not 5 years out in a waiting list. But we can't put shovels in the ground. We're never gonna be able to do that. So, any other discussion? And Bob, any input from you from the Friends perspective?
No, we really haven't talked about the report yet.
Okay.
You know, yeah, that's all I can say.
Okay, no, that's fine. Do you, anything personal, you've seen it yourself?
No, it was interesting. I think there, as you said, there was a lot of things we're already doing. There's a couple questions about some of the recommendations. You know, the one thing that they said that would be a big lift, but I think a big return would be more space, you know, and that's the one, you know, they said, put a tent outside. I'm thinking, when you need space is during inclement weather, like during the winter.
Whatever happened to the
really
talk
good
about a
tent.
deck for out back there?
The what?
The deck for out back of the kitchen.
Oh, I know, we kept asking about it every year.
That came
Yeah.
up and we
Yeah.
talked about it and said
Yeah.
it was wonderful and nothing.
I thought the rec department was gonna be working on that too, but I don't know.
See, and
Yeah.
that's where frankly the need is when we, Bob, a great point, thank you for bringing it up, that we're still trying to get a joint meeting together. Because space is an issue in this building, for us, for rec, for general use. And we're seeing now more use of the 204 municipal building there for overflow. You know, a lot of the rec programs are going over there because they do have space in the gym. But there's a need, so we need to coordinate with the facilities, with rec, you know, with COA. We've got a full basement. But funding something to have done to say, we need more space. Again, back to John's point, what's realistic? Are we gonna get 5 more rooms built downstairs?
Yeah.
Probably not in my watch.
Right.
Probably not.
You know, not when we're struggling
Yeah.
with budgets. And, you know, if you attended town meeting this year, there was a lot of discussion, some of those budget items. And, you know, these are the reality of being in a municipal situation. How do we get it done? So, and we're wonderful, you know, that we have the Friends to work with, but they can't fund our budget.
Right.
So,
Could the Friends fund facility fund facilities? I'm just thinking, could we fund or promote a fundraising campaign to use the basement?
There was a gentleman in this town, he's an icon, he was a living saint. And there was a year that town meeting turned down computers for the schools.
Yeah,
He single-handedly created another town meeting and made it happen. So, yes, there are opportunities if there was something there. But again, I think as an individual department of Council on Aging, say, we want more space, without coordinating with the Facilities Committee and the Recreation and Youth, it's gonna have to be a joint project. But sure, I mean, the money that the Friends have was brought out by a fundraising group that raised the funds for the initial senior center in the community. And when the town agreed to build this beautiful facility here, those funds were set aside because they didn't need it to privately build a senior center. So, yes, I mean, if there was a project, but I think it's far greater than just this department. Anyone else want to weigh in on that? I mean, Angie, you're chair of facilities.
That's a question that's come up too, is space. You know, what do we do? Because we're getting more and more programs coming in from both Council on Aging, Rec Department, everything else. How do you accommodate everybody?
And even the basement.
And even the basement's being utilized right now,
Right,
yeah.
it's not like we're not using it for
Yeah.
stuff.
There's a lot of stuff stored there.
They're stored, yeah, certain things that are stored, yeah.
But there's still a lot of space that could be used for
Yeah,
storage and
right.
others.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
It's a big building, you know.
Yeah.
But
Right.
those are, I think, great discussion for us.
yeah.
But that's gonna have to be brought to the next level, which is joint meetings with facilities. And there's no way to go through town with us just saying, well, we need a couple more rooms.
no.
Not gonna happen.
And an assessment on whether building down or building out is, yeah. So,
And that, it can happen, and Bob, absolutely it can happen. You know, we've seen it through the Bank Street Fire Station, it was ready to be torn down. A vibrant building in the community now. And it was basically private funds went into that, and CPA funds went into that. And that's if you do down the line look at something, that is a source of funds. That's not gonna be cut, oh, I shouldn't say that.
Yeah,
Some of those funds may be earmarked towards sewerage, but that's a source of funding. And if Rec and Youth with facilities decide they want to do something, that could be funded through the CPA fund, with additional funds coming in. It's a long project, but I'm not saying we shouldn't take it on, but that's part of this discussion. If we want to do it, we need to take a number of steps to bring others in to get that done. So, anybody else? Linda, anything?
No.
Okay. Anything from you relative to it?
One thing that popped into my head while we were talking about reaching in segments of population, the church I go to puts out a newsletter every week. And a little ad in that would reach an awful lot of people. You know, it's something that everybody sits and reads when they come into church.
Yep.
And that would reach, you know, a lot of people, and I don't think it would be that expensive to put an ad in that. I know they have blank spaces that they're looking for.
Yeah.
Well, and something that when we start putting working groups together to
Right.
discuss the changes and the action items from the needs assessment, I got a call from the Brewster Council on Aging to see if I wanted to advertise in their newsletter. And what the cost would be over a year to do it. And as we face some of the difficulties in budgeting, those are discussions we're gonna need to have again. You know, do we wanna do it? And from their ad numbers, it's pretty substantial income they're pulling in from advertising in their newsletter. And that's a way you can deal with some of the local, you know, handyman and services by people who are advertising. One option, and something I think we'll have a further discussion on down the line. But I'm still giving thought, you know, and it's a substantial, you know, it's a contract of $1,500 to $2,000 for a year to put an ad in one of those publications. And they have, you've seen their multi-pages of ads.
Yeah.
So it is an income stream, so that if we want to do things like spend money from a budget, and we don't have money in that budget, and next year's finance committee and select board says, well, you're gonna be zero-based, or we're cutting you across the board 5%.
Right.
We need to look at other revenue sources to get that done. which brings in the fundraising, the friends, and alternative means of raising receipts.
Yeah,
Julie, anything from you, in your review of it,
I think the only thing I would add is that there were some recommendations, actually quite a few, that we either already have tried
Correct.
or we're already doing. So there are some discussions to be had there about, are we not doing it effectively to get a good return? Do people not know that we're doing those things? Should we put more emphasis on doing those things? Just, that's something to discuss for sure, because there are quite a few things that we're already trying to do, or have done and didn't see any return from it.
let me just throw this out there then. Great point. And we had an initial discussion about that, of some of the things that we're already doing. And I'm not looking to push heavy things that we're already doing to the select board. I want to see some of the new initiatives that are there. But should we put a working group in together before we go to a public hearing on this and to the select board to fine tune some of the results? To work with Julie to say, hey, some of the things we need to maybe tighten up. Any interest? Or do you want to leave it just to staff?
Well, I think she has the most import, so,
yeah.
but if she wants our assistance,
We should be there.
we should, be there to help her.
Oh, no question, but I think before it gets to that stage of presenting it to the select board, of saying, are there areas of the report that need to be tightened up?
Do you wanna work with one of us to do
I
that?
mean, I think having some more voices at the table to give some feedback to UMass makes sense. Especially deciding which pieces, I think, as you say, to tighten up before we make it public. But it's not a heavy lift for me either.
I'd be glad to, jump in. on
And
that,
obviously, I would like to
Yeah.
jump in as well, so we work with the
Yeah.
three of us. Are you guys comfortable with that? And then we can, send that out, any changes? We can do a
And
red
then-
line or not?
And it probably makes sense to include a couple of the friends on
Yeah.
that as well.
Yeah,
Bob, you wanna jump with this?
definitely, yeah.
That's great.
Because it's gonna, we have the meeting planned for next week, next
Yeah.
Thursday, but it's not like we can get through everything in one meeting.
No. Okay, so why don't we find a time that we can
Alright.
get together, take a
Okay.
look at that, and Julie, we can spend 10 minutes after the meeting, we can look at that. Great, I think it's a great discussion, and I think it's a prelude to action steps that we're gonna be taking, because if we have this needs assessment, and it sits on a shelf in Julie's office for the next 5 years, it's been a waste of time
That would be
and
a good
energy. So, great, alrighty, great discussion, folks. Any new business to come before us today?
I don't have anything.
Anybody?
I'd like to share one thing.
Sure,
I
Bob.
was at a Nauset Neighbors reception last Thursday, Nauset Neighbors had hosted a lot of volunteers just to say thank you, blah, blah, blah. And a number of people said, the COA at Harwich is great, they're fantastic. And I
Yeah.
thought it was wonderful to hear that from, just sort of random people that have interacted with a lot of different things. So Julie, nice job.
No, and I hear that
Very
all the
nice to
time
hear.
from other towns, and I won't say which towns or who lives there, but, that just, oh my God, that COA is just amazing.
We do actually hear that a lot from the visitors that come here, so,
Yeah.
I mean, they're choosing to come here, so I guess they already think favorably of us, but it's nice to hear.
Think about that, okay? Hearing, yes, people think we're good, we think we're good, but we continue to look at what we're doing to continue to try to meet additional needs of our seniors. So, good point. Carol, anything?
Nope, all set.
Doing pretty well on that knee, pal. Good job, Sheila.
Harwich Children's Fund is still looking for one more family to take 2 wonderful circus troopers, teenagers, for the nights of July 14th, 15th, and 16th, and they get free tickets to the show. So you can get my number through Julie or Angie's number and give us a call
One more house needed for
One more
housing
house.
for
Housing.
circus
The
schmirkus.
circus.
for circus.
Yeah.
Angie?
I had a thought with, concerning the, religious groups. I know it would be an action step for later down the line, but I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice if we invited all these religious priests, rabbis, the, group, and actually get them more involved, because the churches used to be very, very involved in the towns, and I know times have changed, I understand that, but maybe we could invite them and put a little heat under them to get them involved and more vocal and more active, and that would be a way of bringing in another group of people as well as educating what's going in, eliminating the religious tones and discussions. You know, that's not the issue. We're trying to just educate people what's happening in the Council on Aging. Could they help us out, and get these rabbis and priests and whatever else more involved outside of the church.
And half of their mission is, community service, community involvement and stuff anyway, so it seems like a really
I
great
think
idea.
as we get into our action steps.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Keep that,
Yeah.
keep that, and
Yeah.
there's no reason we can't host a luncheon for the clergy association.
Well, that's what I was
Yeah,
thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, we've
Yeah.
got a chef,
Yeah.
we've got facilities, so
Yeah.
but I'm gonna count on you.
Yeah.
That's gonna be your baby.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
All right.
some are more active than others, and maybe we can put a
That's
little
an easy
heat on
assignment.
them.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Bob, anything else there? Linda?
No, I just wanna say I would agree with John about the scope. Beware of
Oh,
what
absolutely.
if it's absolutely necessary, fine, but some things are out of our,
There's a lot of work that went into this, and we thank our friends from the Friends, as I normally say. But if we can come up with 3 to 5 action steps that are realistic, that we can put into place, that will make a difference for our seniors, then we've done our job. We're not gonna implement 15 to 20 items coming from this, but we're seeing already results in from the discussions, different opportunities. So I think it's a great, great process that we're going through, and again, focus on if we can come up with 3 to 5 actionable items that we can move forward with, I think this has been a successful endeavor. So. Lauren, anything?
Nothing else.
Madam Director? Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So motion.
Motion made, seconded?
Second.
Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Clean up the table. Thank you so much,
Okay,
all.
Yeah, thank you.
Bob, would you hit the?
John, glad you're feeling better.
Oh, thank you.
Good, good.
Yeah, really, you're doing great.
Yeah, I don't have any brownies
Yeah.
or cookies.
Yeah.
you gotta keep your weight down, gotta go through rehab.